Okay, what we have here today is a video done on a more sport-specific lift to replacing Olympic lifts. If you do Olympic lifts into your program, I'm going to give you a much better lifting tool and the ability to create more force in a much less time. So a quick history of my Olympic lifts. Look, I programmed Olympic lifts for over 2 decades. I still use them with various athletes. Mainly it would be throwing athletes, the hammer, the shot, because they're such ingrained. If I worked with football, I'd probably have them in there to some level, but it wouldn't. It's not the end-all be-all lift. It's not the most effective lift I've ever seen to transfer of training. The problem with Olympic lifts is that they lack transfer to sport. So, for example, the amount of force you have to put in the ground is great, but the duration of that force, how long it takes to put it in the ground, is pretty poor compared to a defensive back running down the field or running back running down the field and making a quick change of direction. That's not even close to the level of what they experience in force. And then the bottom line with Olympic lifts is that the learning curve is so high. I find that football and throwers seem to be more apt to learning them because they want to do them, but the rest of other teams aren't very interested in, and I got more benefits out of other lifts, and I'll explain the two major ones. Well, one major one that I have: the lack of specificity in Olympic lifts in the force and the transfer of power is not even compared to the lift I'm going to show you here in 1 second. And basically what the lift is a resisted hex bar drop jump. Now, why don't I just go to YouTube on that, and what'll happen is you can see what takes place here is that as this athlete goes to do it, he will separate his feet from the ground, as what we have here is a hex bar with 95 pounds total, 25s, and bands looped down around the ground and up. So this weight's being pulled down, and his body weight being pulled down at a high velocity. You probably have a couple extra 100 pounds of force. Now you could obviously build the range of those bands out to whatever you choose to have. But what you'll see here is, you see as he started his lift, his feet came off the ground and he's pulling himself into position so that when he hits, there's a ton of force that jumps up, and he'll repeat that. So you can see that as he does this lift, his feet come off the ground, and this is by far the best lift to replace Olympic lifts I've ever seen. And when I say that, I will tell you this much: on force plates, I get 5 to 10 times the force when you calculate in time over force. What you have is the magnitude of the force compared to Olympic lifts. There's no question. Another lift that I did that's okay, it was 3 to 5 times, was hex band resisted lift. And notice on this one, he doesn't necessarily leave the ground. Okay, he's just jumping. So that one was, even when I say that, 3 to 5 times the force. Now you can find these lifts on YouTube, the band resisted hex bar jump, but you can see that the amount of force that this athlete was enduring was much greater than he could ever produce in Olympic lifts. Why? The bands were pulling down. It's really reactive. My point is that what you saw there with that particular athlete was his first day doing the exercise. So he produced so much more force, 5 to 10 times, than an Olympic lift on his first day doing the lift. Instead of being an Olympic lift expert and maybe not an expert, but highly qualified at them, been doing them for years, you will produce that much force if you calculate it the correct way. Experienced weightlifters, will even be able to produce more force on this lift if you get the loading and the bands right. People ask me, hey, what about squat jumps with Hex Deadlift? I think they're superior to Olympic lifts. You don't have to teach them, but they'll produce the same force, maybe a little bit more. What you need to do is you need to add bands to them to make them the most effective lifts possible. So if you want more videos like this, I have a Triphasic Elite Coaches Facebook forum, and go ahead and Google that. You can find it and become a member.